What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the CrazyFaceUno Podcast, where everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. What's your story? If you'd like to support the show and help us tell more stories like the one you're about to hear, please visit CrazyFaceUno.com today to purchase items from our online store or to donate. As always, I'm your host, Shane McNeely, and boy, are you in for a treat today. It's my honor and privilege to introduce our guest today. His name is Travis Gallinger. Welcome, Travis. Welcome back.
Hey, you ready to knock this shit out?
That's right. Yeah, if you're listening, this is a to be continued. This is the continued part of our first part. So we just did the little intro, and you got a new intro. But we just stopped it, and we're going to re-record. We're recording and continuing on with the story that we left off with the other day, that you potentially listened to the other day. Today is the same day for us, and just a few minutes later, we used the restroom and rehydrated, and we're ready to go. Travis, so if somebody's picking up right in the middle of it, we were just talking about, we started back at the beginning. You are an imagery analyst for the U.S. government. You are a Marine, and you were telling us the story of like childhood to present day, and we just left off with you being deployed to Afghanistan, and the first time you had ever been shot at. And you kind of talked about that adrenaline rush and that experience, and how there's nothing that really compares to it. So could you set the scene for us a little again, and then continue on with your story?
Sure. So we're actually going to backtrack a little bit from the first time I got shot at. So we're going to go to the day before. The day before, I had been, your typical patrol is about 4 kilometers, 4 hours. You move pretty slow. You're pretty vigilant. You observe things, post patrol brief, all that good stuff. So it was an evening patrol, and I say evening as in like we got in just before dark. So get in just before dark, and we had heard that there was potentially an operation that we were going to be doing later on in the evening, but then we were told it wasn't going to happen. So I was like, all right, well, it's dark now. It's probably, 10 o'clock. And so I laid down on my cot, because that's what I was sleeping on. I was sleeping in a sleeping bag on a cot in a tent with no AC and no heat.
Okay.
So it was about 11 o'clock, and my boss comes up and kicks my rack, as he usually did every morning, because I was the young millennial that slept in every morning. So I was awoken by a kick on the cot. Hey, usually was something like, hey, wake up, shitbag, or I don't know, something derogatory. And so he said, hey, wake up. And I knew he was nice, so I knew there was something going on. He was like, hey, wake up. We have an operation going on, and we need to get ready to go. So we sit around for about an hour. We get ready. We throw all our stuff on, and we're waiting to get this brief. And I think we stepped out. We finally left the base at like, midnight, 1 o'clock. And the operation was to go raid this house that we thought was a bad dude. And I was going to be one of the security elements. So, mind you, as we said in the last podcast, this was a pretty new unit. They'd only been there a week or two.
And where are you in Afghanistan? Just so if you're tuning in.
Marja, I guess, Marja District, Kandahar Province.
Okay.
I think that's the way it works. Anyway, Marja, Afghanistan. It was the main priority in 2010 of the government. Gotcha. And so it takes us, I think we only had to go about 3 kilometers. It took us like 5 hours to get there, which is ridiculous. It's way too slow.
Yeah.
So,
is that walking, or is that?
Yeah, that's walking. So
Okay.
mind you, I'd been up all day. I'd gone on a 4 kilometer patrol already in the Afghan heat. This was probably June-ish, and so it's in the hundreds every day, and I haven't slept. So I'm going on, I don't know, 24 hours ish, and we finally get to this compound, and we set up security. It's still dark, and my Afghan army, who I'm there to train, we're all sitting in like ditches, and we've got defilade and cover, and some of them keep falling asleep, and I'm picking up rocks and I'm throwing rocks at them, and I'm like, sleep no good, because that's the way they talk. That's what they understand. Yeah. And I'm laying there in what we call the prone. So I'm laying down and I'm looking down my scope, not looking down the scope, but I'm looking over my rifle, just observing my surroundings. And next thing I know, I get hit with a rock. Ranger, they called me Ranger because they couldn't pronounce Gallinger. Ranger, sleep no good. I had fallen asleep. And I got hit with rocks, just like I was doing with them. So
at least you guys had each other's back.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the connection that I made with these guys. Like, these guys, I would have happily given my lives for these dudes, and I'm confident they would have done the same.
Yeah.
So
sorry to interrupt, Travis. And I was just thinking about this as you were telling the story. One of the reasons that we separated this into two parts is that there's just part of the story and the story that you want to tell yourself. And you mentioned before we got going the second part here that, you want this to be able to be something that other Marines and other people that have experienced maybe similar things to hear. And so I just want to put that out there that this is something that you want to share.
Yeah. So I'm a very big advocate on mental health, especially when it comes to our veterans and military members. For one, because I've seen, I don't even know how many military members that I personally knew lose their lives to suicide.
Yeah. And
I recently had one of my Marines, he committed suicide. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of tired of seeing it. So
yeah.
Another another thing that we hear a lot from veterans, especially those that have deployed, is they don't talk about what they went through. And I totally understand that concept, but I've kind of been, I wanted to buck that, because to me, the people that you love, the people that are there for you, the people that want to support you and figure out what the hell you went through, don't know what you went through until they know what you went through.
Yeah.
So, and I do think that is an important part. And I'm saying this because I'm a person that has been through these things, suffered through these things by myself, and then have learned to since talk about it and help my family and my friends and my loved ones understand.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, it sucks to talk about it. It hurts to talk about it. I may get emotional talking about this shit, but how do you expect people to understand how to help you if they don't know what you're going through?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I ask everybody that's gone through anything like this to ask themselves. Like, you're not tough because you're suffering in silence. Like, you're tough when you, as we just talked about yesterday, like when you get the things out.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. The hard part is talking about it and letting other people know. Yeah. And it's somewhat relieving. Like, you still have to live with it. Mm-hmm. It still sucks, but that's why my parents know what I've been through. My brothers know what I went through.
Yeah.
My best friends know. And I've made it a point to every woman that is in my life that granted, I've had many failed relationships, but the ones that I've wanted to have serious relationships with, these are the things that I've told them because I want them to know too.
Yeah.
Because it never goes away. But anyway.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for, your willingness to share it. And it's an honor to be able to share your story today and to help you, hopefully help other people along the way. I think that's very admirable, and I think it's very brave and courageous of you to do. And so thank you. I appreciate it as well.
Well, I'm just happy to be able to utilize you, somebody I haven't talked to in quite some time, to utilize your platform to get it out there.
No problem. Anytime.
No, it's great.
All right. So back to the story. Sorry to interrupt. I wanted people to know kind of your heart behind it. It's something we had talked about, but I think that it's important for people to understand that and to know that, and know that I'm not probing disrespectfully, but this is a conversation you wanted to have. So
yeah, for sure. And I think it was a good segue.
Perfect.
So anyway, sitting there, I had just gotten a rock thrown at me. Travis, you're a piece of shit. You fell asleep. Wake up, says the Afghan. So the raid force goes in, does what they do as usual. I mean, it's Marine Corps intelligence, so those two things don't really mesh very well. I mean, we are the Marine Corps. So we decide to do our egress, which is egress back to base. And in the meantime, I don't know why things kind of get fuzzy here, so bear with me. But for some reason,
Can I ask you a question? Are you in charge at this point in time, or
no?
Are there other leaders? Okay, you have other leaders and other.
In the grand scheme of things, there's every other Marine. Then there's me, and then there's the Afghan forces. And not even that. There's any lieutenant in the Afghan forces would outrank me, to be completely honest. And even some of their first sergeants, if we wanted to get technical.
Yeah.
But and that'll actually come into play later on in the story.
Okay.
So we decided to egress and RTB, which is return to base. And for some reason, and I don't know why, I don't know if it was just this new unit didn't understand the lay of the land, didn't know where they were going, whatever it was. Mind you, there's only, I think there was 4 of us from my team. So my team, it was a lieutenant, a gunny, I think a sergeant, and then me. We had the most seniority in the area. We knew the area the best, other than the Afghans.
Okay.
And
at this point in time, how long had you been there?
Oh, hours. Hours. I mean,
in
pre-dawn.
Afghanistan.
Oh, in Afghanistan, 4 months.
Okay, so you'd been there for a good chunk
3
of time.
months. Yeah, around 3 or 4 months. I mean, I would have to check some paperwork. But yeah, 3 or 4 months I had been there, and I had patrolled the area before, so I knew it. Mm-hmm. So by this time the sun is up, we're all done because we got the raid done just before. As soon as sun came up, we had forces in the house clearing the house, and we were stepping off to return to base. I don't know, 30 minutes, 45 minutes after we went in the house. But it was taking so long to get back to base. And I remember we had decided to go on what's called a satellite patrol. So we split our forces up into 2 different units. And we were parallel to one another. But what it does is it just helps cover more ground. It's more security, essentially. And I remember we're walking down what we call this wadi. It was an irrigation canal. And it was only maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep. And we're walking down it because, I don't know, in hindsight, it's really stupid to walk down them. But we're walking down this, and I remember up ahead of me, maybe 100 yards, I see 2 compounds. a compound to the left of this irrigation canal and a compound to the right of this irrigation canal. And up ahead of me, the canal, it goes straight, and then it takes a right turn, a 90-degree right turn, and then a 90-degree left turn. And it splits those two compounds. And in front of that irrigation canal, that irrigation canal ran to a road. So if I hope that helps draw the picture. But as I saw our first Marines, which were from the new unit, as I saw them enter into that alleyway via this irrigation canal, I see the compound on the right. It almost looked like it was a shed, but it had like a thatched roof, so like mud and hay. Yeah. I see it kind of shift from like left to right, and I see the dust kind of drift off to the right. Yeah. And I'm thinking, to me, it looked like an RPG, but I knew it wasn't an RPG because I didn't hear two booms. Yeah. Because when an RPG goes off, you hear boom from it launching and then boom from it exploding. Yeah. And the next thing I hear is doc, doc, doc. Yeah. So they were asking for a doctor, for a corpsman. And I knew that for whatever reason, I don't even know how I knew, but I knew that in my satellite patrol, we did not have a doc. Mm. So for whatever reason, I decided to sprint up there. So I sprinted up, and immediately I'm in between these two compounds. And as I'm running up, I see this car with a dude hanging out. It almost looked like a...
you sprinted to the compound?
Yeah, I sprinted to the compound.
The one that you just described, that you saw like dust.
Yeah, like almost blow up. Yeah. So I sprinted up there. And it was almost like some, what's the name of the movie with the kid that's playing football? Like, I want to say it's like Boys and Men, but I know that's just a band that I'm not thinking of. Anyway, I sprinted up there, and as I sprint up there, I see a car pass, and like this dude hanging out the window, looking, and what we came to find out is there was an IED placed on the corner of the compound. So I guess what I failed to mention is we had gotten shot at previously. Mm-hmm. And we were in that irrigation canal because of it. And like I said, things are spotty, so I'm jumping around. Yeah. But
what was your, if you don't mind me asking, again, I want to just, this isn't, I want to make sure everybody knows, like, I give my guess beforehand, like, and I've told you the same thing, like, if there's anything that I ask, like, all you have to do is tell me, like, I don't feel comfortable asking that or whatever. Like, I have the utmost respect for my guests, so, like, if this is too far, like, just let me know, or, you know, if I ever cross that line, that you have full...
You're good, bro.
You're full control, but...
Anything you need, go for it.
No, I just want to know, like, what was the... It's a silly question in some ways, but what was the indication that you were getting shot at? Like, do you remember that? Like, do you remember that, like, oh yeah, shit, so, like that moment? I remember you said in the previous episode that we had talked about, you kind of like hit the deck basically, or like gone, you know, duck and cover kind of deal.
Yeah. But I kind of skipped over that.
Yeah.
In this session. So after the raid, we start egressing, returning to base, and we ended up getting shot at. And out there in Afghanistan, you have scouts everywhere. Like they'll pay little kids to just walk around and then like go tell somebody, like, you know, I counted this many people, whatever. Yeah. So it wasn't long after that we had gotten shot at. We were just in a field, and the way you know, I mean, well, somebody that you don't know is shooting at you. Like, your guys aren't shooting, and it's consistent.
Is it the indicators, like, they're hitting the ground? Is it, like, hitting around you? Like,
the guys
do you know what I mean?
We were fighting weren't even that accurate, dude. Like, the guys we were fighting, and I don't want to take anything away from anybody that might be listening that was there before me, but the guys that were there after the guys that were there when I was there, they sucked at fighting.
Yeah.
They were fucking terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So the way you know is you hear zings and cracks.
Yeah. So the zings are like it's going past you, and the cracks are like it's hitting the ground around you or hitting a rock. Or
the zings are it went above your head.
Got
the
it.
Cracks are that was close.
Yeah.
So you're just hearing a bunch of zings. So nothing's really close. So we know that we can move.
What are they shooting? What kind of weapons?
They're shooting AK-47s.
Okay, which are inaccurate in and of themselves.
Agree and disagree. If you're within, so I've shot everything that the Taliban at that time had in their arsenal, which was basically Russian weapons. So the AK-47 is a fantastic weapon.
Yeah, I've actually shot an AK-47.
Yeah,
fun fact.
So the ones that they had, and I used very used ones that were beaten to shit.
Mm-hmm.
If you are 200 to 250 meters, you can be pretty accurate with it. It's not a bad weapon.
Yeah.
Anything beyond, 250 to 300, if you have a good one, you can be pretty accurate.
Gotcha.
300 and beyond, good luck.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried about you.
Gotcha.
And you get so used to hearing that out there that you can tell how far. You can identify the weapon system for the most part. You can identify how far they are and all that. So you get used to it and you understand. So we knew that we probably weren't in any danger. But yeah, you drop down and, those first couple seconds feel like a minute, 2 minutes. They feel like forever.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, I'm not really in any danger. So, and you use just indicators from elsewhere. Like I was in a tree line and I knew I had leaves from way up high falling, and I know that's not close, so I can stand up. I have 10 feet.
You're evaluating your surroundings and
yeah. So it's the OODA loop. I don't know if you're familiar with the OODA loop.
Mm-mm.
If not, figure it out because it's good stuff. But you do it whether you know that you do it or not. But so you figure that out, and that's what led us to where we were in the story. So I'm running up there, and I'm now in between these two compounds, which are slightly offset from one another. The one on my left is closer to the road than the one on my right, or at least it's longer. I don't remember which. Excuse me. And I have two guys that are down on the left side, and one that was originally down on the right side that moved himself to the left side, so that way he would be an easier casualty to assess.
Yeah.
So immediately I realized that it was an IED, and the guy in the front is probably logically going to be the one that's going to be hurt the worst. So I go up there and I assess him. I talk to him. I ask him how he's doing. I triage him. I look to see if he doesn't have anything major. He's got maybe a concussion and maybe a little bit of shrapnel, nothing crazy that he can't deal with himself. So I work myself back.
How far away, when an IUD goes off, is it you have to step right on it, or what is the trigger? What is that trigger range?
Fortunately, these guys, like I said, sucked at fighting.
Yeah.
They were terrible. So they didn't set the IED in a place that was going to provide enough shrapnel to kill anybody.
Okay.
So they were just fucking retarded.
So what I mean, this is my ignorance. I don't understand this. What do you mean by that? What is it there's rocks around it, or is there what is it? What's the shrapnel that would be detrimental? What would be why wasn't this effective, I guess?
So what they did is after they got in their first firefight with us, they jumped in a car, they jumped on the road, and they tried to do what we call backlay an IED. So they know the probable route that we're going to take to get back to where our base is. So if you have a house and you're looking at it from the front, they set an IED on the back right corner. Okay. But what they did, I think, is they set it too far inside. They probably should have set it to the right side of the house, because I mean, we're egressing. We're trying to get away from we're breaking contact. They probably would have been okay with like throwing anything on top of an IED in that alleyway and hitting us with it. But instead they set it on just the backside corner of that house. So like if you're hiding, waiting for your buddy to come around the corner to scare him, that's where they would have hit it.
Gotcha.
And I think that's where they kind of fucked up, is they didn't set themselves up for success, but they didn't get killed either. So, I mean, that works.
Yeah.
Which
do you have to step right on it?
No, you don't. So there's multiple different kinds of IEDs. This was what was called a command control IED, and which means whatever they did, whether it was like, it was some sort of remote controlled IED, whether it was like a text to a phone,
so they were watching.
It was, yeah. You know, and there's wire IEDs where they, you know, it's literally connected by wire, that stuff. So they just didn't set it up properly.
Sure.
So I get to the second guy, I triage this guy, and this guy has similar wounds to the first guy. Everything superficial, nothing too crazy. So I get to the final guy, and this guy's a little more fucked up. And how, I don't know. Maybe things ricocheted. Who knows? But this guy's got some leg wounds. He's bleeding pretty badly. Not too bad. And I'll never forget this, because he had the least... the first two dudes were concussed, for sure. Mm-hmm. This guy didn't seem like he had a concussion. Because when I went, I saw he was bleeding, so I had to cut his pants open to see where the bleeding was come from, how bad it was. And I'll never forget it. So as Marines, we were boot bands, and they're basically like cloth rubber bands with elastic in them. And we tuck our pants into them so that way it looks nice and neat. Yeah. And I'll never forget that this dude said, I whip out my knife, and he said, "Dude, don't cut my boot bands. I've had these since boot camp." And I laughed at him. I was like, "You're good, dude. I got you." So I pulled his pants out of his boot band, and I actually ended up sticking him with my knife. I had so many juices running, and I actually went too hard into his pants, and I stuck him with my knife. Oh no! And he actually reacted from it. All the stuff he had going, he actually reacted.
Which is good, right? I mean,
yeah, it is. It's good. So this is the first person I've ever treated in combat. Like I put a tourniquet on him, and I didn't really need to. I ended up taking it off because he didn't need it. Yeah. But, I mean,
better safe than sorry, though, right? I mean.
Yeah. And so I wrapped him up.
So on his leg, like upper thigh, then?
Yeah, it was his left leg. I think it was his left leg that was mostly jacked up. Yeah. And he just had some shrapnel. So what it was is they tend to put, like, BBs or marbles or glass or whatever in their IEDs, and so that way it provides shrapnel.
Is there I have zero idea about any of this. So like is there like a little bucket? Is there like what is the IUD? Like we hear this on in the world all the time, right? In society, like IUD. But like I have zero idea what it looks like.
Well,
is it a canister? Is it a pipe? Is it what does it look like? And I know they're probably all different.
Yeah, that is the key to the IED. An IED is an improvised explosive device. Yeah. So it's whatever I can put an explosive in to harm you. It could be a cell phone. It could be a computer. It could be, they like to use pressure cookers. Yeah. They like to use, out there in Afghanistan, they cook a lot with vegetable oil. And this vegetable oil will come in big cube-shaped plastic containers. Yeah. And they'll take those containers and they'll fill those full of homemade explosives. Yeah. and they'll bury those in the ground. They'll
Okay.
use artillery shells. They'll use anything they can get their hands on.
Yeah.
I can get all sorts into that, like trigger devices, things like that. But they will use anything and everything, and they'll use plaster and paint things to look like rocks. Like it would boggle your mind the extent and the intelligence that goes into what they use for these explosives.
Sure.
So I don't know what this one was.
Yeah.
It wasn't very big. It was maybe 10, 15 pounds. It wasn't that big compared to what they're used to.
Okay. And then is there a specific, like, is it, dynamite? Is it, what is the, like, compound that they use to explode?
Well, this is going to sound weird, but it's called anal.
Okay.
So it is aluminum nitrate and aluminum, I think. So on the whatever table, the compound table? Periodic table.
There we go.
It's aluminum is ammonium nitrate or ammonium and nitrate. So it's like AN.
Yeah.
And then aluminum is AL.
Yep.
So we call it anal. And
okay.
It's fertilizer and aluminum sulfate, I think, is all they need to do. And they build all this stuff on their own. And
is that easy to find, or is this stuff that they have to, like...
Well, that's why you'll see a lot of pictures from earlier in the 2000s of Marines confiscating, like we did it, like hundreds and hundreds of pounds of fertilizer because it's got ammonium nitrate in it. Ammonium nitrate helps the crops grow.
And
so
this is, again, just tell me, but who's supplying this to them?
Dude, you can go buy fertilizer with ammonium nitrate in it right now.
Yeah, I know you can.
So
I know you can here, but, like, is that a common thing in Afghanistan? Is there massive amounts of it? Like, is that something, or is it just the simple, like, little jug of it is enough?
I don't know the exact mixture. I was told once upon a time, but I don't remember.
Sure.
But it's, when you're the Taliban and you're getting funded by whoever and whomever, like, if you want it, you can go buy it. And it's pretty easy to get a hold of that stuff, and the process that they have. And the area that we were was desolate enough that if they wanted to go have a compound or a building that they wanted to go make this stuff out of, it was pretty accessible.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but
okay.
What us as the government had to do was we had to make fertilizer that didn't have ammonium nitrate and was just as effective
to provide for farmers.
We had to make that stuff available.
Sure.
So, yeah. So that's a whole process. Super interesting. One of the reasons I want to get into EOD, as I said in the last podcast.
Yeah.
But so triage these guys, and all these dudes needed to be evacuated out. So we call it evac. So in order to do so, you have to set up what we call an HLZ, which is a helicopter landing zone. And fortunately, right behind us, there was this giant ass field.
Yeah.
So I help these guys. I stick with these guys the whole time. I get them on the helicopter. And since I spoke the best Pashto and we only had one interpreter, the interpreter typically stays with your highest ranking dude. So it was my lieutenant at the time. So that way he can command and control and whatever. Because he was the highest ranking individual out of the entire patrol. Well, unfortunately for that patrol, the point man, the squad leader, and the assistant squad leader were the three guys that went down. So that's number 3, 2, or 3, 1, and 2.
Sure.
In that order. So those guys, being new to country, most of which hadn't deployed before, they didn't really know what to do. So I had 3 Afghans to me, and in my opinion, like, I wasn't worried about the Marines. The Marines were going to take care of themselves. Next man up. So I took my Afghans and I went to the same wadi, the same irrigation canal that we were running up, I went to that same canal to provide security because you need 360 security. So the helicopters start circling, and all of a sudden we start getting shot at.
Yeah.
And there are 2 compounds, maybe.
So just like seeing the helicopters come in, they were like,
yeah,
here we go.
They knew they had casualties, so that's when they're going to hit us.
Yeah.
So, I'm in this irrigation canal. It's a tree line. It's not dense, but there's trees sporadically throughout this.
Yeah.
And maybe 100 meters in front of us, 150 meters in front of us, it's just open field. They had cleared it all out. And since they don't use like regular, they use like animal tillers, like old school, Amish stuff. You've seen it. Yep. The roots are
like on
deep.
The ox that like they pull. Yep.
Yeah. So when they till stuff up, it's deep and it's hard to run across.
Sure.
So there are 2 compounds.
Ankle busters.
Yes, exactly. There's 2 compounds, and it's probably those 2 compounds, those 2 buildings are probably 20 meters separation between the 2 of them. And I know we're getting shot at between one of them. And my E7, so who was the highest enlisted dude on my team, he was actually an R&R because our deployment was so long. So I had what's called this 203, which is the grenade launcher.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, and I'm just chucking grenades at these dudes. And I finally catch sight of one of these dudes, and the compound to the right is just ever so slightly canted. So that way I can see the entire side of the building,
mm-hmm.
and I see him. But it's like 2 degrees at 100, 150 yards, meters, whatever. So I launch a grenade over at this dude. And later on, I find out that I had hit the very corner of this compound. And with those 203s, you can be accurate, but at 150 meters, like, to be accurate by that much, like you're just trying to be within 5 meters. And technically I was, but I just wasn't deep enough.
Yeah.
So we're still getting fired at. The helicopters can't shoot at these guys because they don't know who's in these buildings. They don't know if there's women and children or innocents in these buildings, so they can't shoot at them, which means they can't land.
Strategic as well, right?
Yeah. You're there for the counterinsurgency operation. You have to build, you have to touch the hearts and minds of these people. So you have to show them that you're there to secure and help support them.
Right. But
so
the insurgents or like the,
what do
you call them? Like Taliban or what is
the
their...
Taliban at the time. Yeah.
So they're the using... one, they use those different areas. Mm-hmm. They force themselves into these areas and then
use the civilian populace. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because it's also really hard to tell the difference, correct?
You can't.
Yeah.
Like the dude just throws his AK down and just takes off.
Right.
So at this point, I'm hearing that they can't land. The birds can't land because it's what we call a hot LZ.
Yeah.
A hot landing zone, which means they're getting shot at. They don't know if these dudes have RPGs. They're not going to go get killed because of this. Like, go secure the shit. Mm-hmm. And I knew this. And without anybody prompting me to, I have 3 Afghans to my left.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell the one that speaks a little bit of English is next to me. And I tell him in the broken posture that I have, we're going to go get these guys. So I push forward and I have my rifle up. And at this time, like, the firing had kind of stopped, but we're still returning fire. Like, at one point in time, as I'm returning fire, I run out of ammo. I grab a magazine, I reinsert, I reload, and I start sending rounds down range. Things stop. I keep looking down the scope, And me and these 3 Afghans end up going and we secure the outside perimeter of these houses together. And then we go inside these houses and clear these houses. And as that's happening, the helicopter actually gets to land.
What's it look like to clear a place like this? So you're going in and making sure that nobody's in there, and making sure nobody has weapons. What does that look like?
So from the guys that went to like Fallujah in Iraq, I don't know, because that shit's scary as fuck.
Yeah.
That clearing a house and clearing a stairwell are the 2 scariest fucking things in the world.
Sure.
But to me and those guys, it was very, very general. Like, if you didn't have a rifle, I didn't give a shit about you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just wanted to make sure the outside, because as we pushed past these buildings, because I knew they were past the buildings, we jumped in this wadi, and a lot of times these are also sewage canals.
Yeah. And
we call them shit wadis. And that's exactly what this was. Like, I jumped in this shit wadi. And I radioed over like it's clear, but the bird was already landing. And and it's crazy because I know I told you I helped load them on. I think I did, but at the same time, like, everything is such a mess. Like, maybe it was one of those, like, the bird wouldn't take off. I don't remember what, but I know we had to secure the area for some reason, and I don't remember exactly what it was. So anyway, we secure that. Like, we clear the houses. There's just civilians in there. No big deal. Like, we start coming back.
When you reach, so you go into a building, you recognize that there's civilians. What tells you that they're civilians? Do you, like, frisk them? Yeah. Do they, like, what does that look like?
Women and children. Like, I had 3 Afghans, dude.
Okay.
There's no way to actually, it's not a legitimate, like, raid. It's like, I just need to make sure there's no threat here.
Okay.
It's very general. Like, I know as much about what's going on as that person whose house I just invaded knows what's going on.
Yeah, sure.
Like, there's no differentiation at that point in time. Like, it could be the same dudes that were shooting at us. Maybe the Taliban threw them $50, which will support their family for half a year.
Yeah.
And said, hey, shoot at these guys and dump the AKs in the shit wadi.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to tell.
Yeah.
But at that point, it doesn't matter. Like,
as long as the threat is gone, like, that's all that you care about.
Yeah. So, and this is another place where it kind of gets foggy again, because I don't know if this happened. I don't really remember when this happened, but I remember that after this, like, somehow I met back up with the majority force, like, and then we went on a security halt for some reason. I don't remember why.
What does that mean?
It just means, like, we went to check on everybody. Like,
Gotcha.
Is everybody good? Does everybody have ammo? Does everybody have water?
Mm-hmm.
Is anybody hurt?
Mm.
And I ended up kind of taking control, because as we were doing that, we got shot at again. And I ended up taking control of that same Marine squad that I said I wasn't worried about, but had their 1, 2, and 3 taken out. Like, I ended up taking control of that squad and commanding and controlling that squad, because my lieutenant was elsewhere. And so that actually got written up for an award, because
wow.
I mean, I went from being a personnel administrator, like pushing papers and being what we call an admin bitch, to, like, taking over this infantry squad. And that's not my job.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, the rest of the deployment really was, like, it was a mishmash of things like that. And I always found myself, like, when things happened and people got hurt, like, I always found myself being the first guy there to treat the situation. I've always enjoyed medical things, and we didn't have a doc on my team, so
Is that common?
Well, I mean, my deployment wasn't a common deployment either.
Yeah.
So we just didn't have enough docs to go around. We had 5 teams, and I think we only had 4 docs, but I had established myself so well as being capable of maintaining, the medical element of it, that they weren't as worried about having a doc on my team.
Sure.
So, I mean, we got hit with my convoy got hit with an IED. My Afghan gunner took a lot of shrapnel in the leg, and I was the guy that treated him. Like,
mm-hmm. And this is
things
later
like
on.
that. Yeah, that was later on. And I mean, the deployment, we got shot at a bunch more times and stuff like that. But I mean, we took very few casualties. We were very fortunate. All 21 of us that went out there, from my team, my Marine Corps team, we all came back. None of us got shot. None of us got hurt. Well, yeah. I mean, we had a couple Purple Hearts, but yeah. it was IEDs and concussions and some minor issues. Like, yeah. Nobody got seriously hurt or maimed, mm-hmm. and so we were really fortunate.
Yeah. Man,
but
what was so? How long were you in Afghanistan?
9 months.
Say that one more time.
9 months. From March to just before Christmas.
So this is about the first time you had been shot at. This story you just told was about
the first time I had been shot at.
Yeah.
Ever.
This was almost halfway though, like through your time there.
Yeah, it was about a third of the way through.
Yeah. About
halfway, somewhere between there. Yeah.
And did it just go up from there? Did you just have more encounters as time went on?
I went from wondering if I was ever going to get a combat action ribbon, ever going to get shot at, to like, all right, this is normal. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And we weren't even like the hottest position. My best friend in the world, a man that I consider my daughter's uncle, my brother, mm-hmm. That dude was getting shot at almost daily.
Yeah.
His name is Adet Nsemo, and his story, that is somebody I'm going to put you in touch with, because you want to interview that motherfucker. His story is incredible.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'm more than willing to, more than welcome to. So was that the only time you were in active duty or in Afghanistan? What all, like, I don't even know where to go from here, to be completely honest, Travis. So like, take the lead wherever you want to take, this conversation. Right. But
so from there, that's when life really got interesting. Mm-hmm. So when you're on deployment's easy, because the way my psychiatrist explained it is you slip into kind of this Neanderthal mentality of like, nothing really matters. Like, you wake up and don't die.
Yeah.
And you learn to shut off parts of your brain with like sympathy and empathy to a certain extent. Obviously, you're still going to have that. But you learn to shut those things off, and you learn to live that way, especially when you're doing it for 9 months. And there's a reason the Marine Corps only has like 7-month deployments, mm-hmm. because the Marine Corps has done the studies, and like these Army deployments of like 12 months, 24 months, those are insane. I don't know how they expect these guys to leave for 12 months, have 2 weeks of leave in between that, and then go do another 12 months. Like, it's insane. You can't do that. You're ruining people as people.
Yeah.
So you get back, and naturally you think, I'm fine. But then you have things like a door slams and you jump, and mm-hmm. like you catch on to these little things. And when I got back, not like anything changed, because I was pretty much an alcoholic before I left, and I continued to drink a lot, to binge drink. But the thing is it was different this time. Like, I was drinking for a reason. And what I came to realize later on is it was survivor's remorse, even though nobody died.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a very, very good point man for my team. And I felt like I should have been the point man for the guy that got hit by the IED.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me years to realize that, no, it shouldn't have been that way. Like, the dude that was there should have been there. Like, it was their operation. But that doesn't, you don't use logic necessarily when you're going through these things. So I started drinking a lot. When I finally got back to my unit, I started on a weekday. Like, I wasn't working out or anything. So I would come home and I would drink a 6-pack, and it started with a 6-pack, and that lasted about, I don't know, a week, and that 6-pack turned into a 12-pack, and that lasted maybe 2 weeks, and we're talking every night with this, every night, and I had pretty much had 9 months sober, so a 6-pack worked for a while.
Yeah.
Well, the 12-pack turned into, it was a half a bottle of Captain, and at the time, I was living in the barracks, so you're not allowed to have hard liquor.
Yeah.
But it was a half a bottle of Captain, and I did that for a couple days, and it was a bottle of Captain, and then half a bottle of vodka, a whole bottle of vodka, and within a month, I had finished a bottle of Wild Turkey in a night. And this is where I really want to get into the mental health side of things and coming back to society after deployment. So I didn't realize it, but this whole time, so this had all happened within a month.
Where were you at this time?
Okinawa, Japan still.
Okay, you were back in Japan. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. So this escalation of essentially alcoholism, or at least alcohol abuse, had only taken a month and a half tops. And unbeknownst to me, like, I was kind of doing the right things. Like, I was going to people that I thought I could reach out to help me out with these issues. Mm-hmm. But none of them, like, I would always get frustrated and be like, you don't fucking know what you're talking about, because they just hadn't been on the same deployment.
Yeah.
So eventually I just started.
What were the quote issues, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what was it that, like, what were you reliving or avoiding, or what was the thing that you talked about the remorse, but, like, were you reliving those moments? What was that experience?
Yeah, the biggest thing was just the survivor's remorse. And like I said, and that's the only way, that's what I call it, because it's what most people feel when people around them actually get killed. But nobody got killed around me.
Sure,
like,
but the effects are the same. It's just that's the term. I understand what you're saying. And
I think it was a lot of things. The fact that I left Afghans there that I really cared about, like, and knowing that war was never going to end for them. That sucked. And these guys had families and kids and everything, and they wanted to do it, but they were away from these people, but they were so bad, regardless of how well trained my guys were. You're fighting an endless war, and I knew that. And just it was reliving those things over and over. And I remember when I was in Afghanistan, I had a gunny tell me, you don't drink to forget, you don't drink to forget, you drink to remember. Yeah. And at the time I was like, shut up, old man, you don't know what you're talking about, bullshit, 21-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And this dude was, come to find out later, like, he was sober because he had his struggles with alcoholism. Yeah. And, or at least alcohol use. I don't want to say alcoholism, because I don't know that much about it. I just knew I looked up to him a lot. Mm-hmm. He was a fantastic figure. But so I remember the night I went to Wild Turkey, and I finished the whole bottle.
Why do you think that's significant to you?
Well, I'm gonna get there.
Okay.
So, it was throughout this month and a half. It was a lot of me either going to somebody looking for help, them not being able to like actually relate, and me telling them like they're pussies or whatever, and walking out of the room or whatever it is. But this night I drank that bottle, and I called a lot of people. And one of the last people I called, the last person I called, was my mom. And it was late. It was probably 2 or 3 in the morning for me. And I called her, and I was talking to her, and I was crying, and I was in the corner of my bed. And I remember, the fucked up part is, mind you, like, turkey's 101 proof, and I remember all of it. And she told me, Travis, I don't know what I can do for you.
Yeah.
And that was huge.
Was that
because
more the answer you were looking for?
No, it was the opposite.
Okay.
I didn't want to hear that answer at all. I wanted help. I wanted somebody to tell me like it was going to be okay. And I'm not saying she didn't say that, but
I guess I asked that because you had said you had gone to multiple people beforehand, and
yeah,
their answers weren't sufficient enough for you. And I don't.
Yeah.
And I guess from my perspective, that like I see that. What if your mom had given you an answer? What would that have done for you? How would that have given you any more resolve than not? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's why I asked that question, because it seems like it's not necessarily something that anybody could solve for you. It was something you had to go through and figure out.
Looking at it now, she gave me the answer I needed to hear.
Right.
Because I knew my mom couldn't help.
Yeah.
But I needed somebody, and the reason I got pissed off at other people when they couldn't help me is because I was comparing what I went through to what they went through. And looking back at it now, it's not that their emotions were any different or they felt any different, but I was judging what I went through compared to what they went through, and I was like, "Oh, you're a bitch! Like you didn't do shit."
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Like, you can almost get hit by a car and have that same reaction I did.
Yeah.
Like it's just the person and how things affect them. But at 21, I didn't understand that.
Sure.
So my mom told me the thing I needed to hear, but she was the only one that it resonated with. Like,
mm-hmm.
It resonated when she said, I can't help you. And I don't know what to say. Like, that's when things clicked. And for like the next 2 months, I literally, like, I would get off work and I would lock myself in my room. And I was a pretty popular guy because I was working at the office that I was working at. Like, everybody had to go in there.
Yeah.
So I knew everybody. I'd helped everybody. And throughout this process of me, that month and a half where I was just drinking, there was many times where, like, my bosses, I'm still close with almost all of them because they looked out for me so much. Because there was a lot of times where I would sleep in, and they would never get mad at me. They never punished me. They kind of just, without asking, which is something that I think we need to start doing, but they never asked, and they just let me do my thing. Mm-hmm. And, but they just understood that I was going through things. And, I'm so grateful for the things that they did, and they could have really cracked down on me, and maybe it would have worked, but I don't think it would have at the time. But it's one of those things that as leaders and with mental health, that those are the signs. Those are the signs that you need to start getting involved.
Yeah.
But I mean, this was 2010, so it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. So, but it's these things that really helped me pull myself out of it. And, but I still, even after that stuff, I never went to talk to anybody. I never went to talk to a psychiatrist. I never brought it up again. I just, I kind of dealt with it myself.
Yeah.
And I cut out alcohol, and I learned how to consume alcohol to not affect those things. And I learned how to just cope with it and manage it.
Yeah.
But it didn't go away. It never goes away. It's still with me every day. So I learned.
Do you think about it every day?
At this point in time, I don't think about it, but I know that there are things that I do. Like, I still check corners.
Yeah.
So I'll look around corners if it's not my house. At work, I check corners. I check windows. I'm just hyper vigilant when it's hard for me to focus in restaurants and public places because I'm looking at people. I'm looking at doors. I'm looking at people's hands. So it is hard for me to focus in that aspect. So technically, yes, I think about it every day, but I don't think it's a bad thing at this point in time. I've accepted it as a part of my life, and I don't think it's a bad thing that I'm hyper vigilant. So, because maybe one day it'll save my life.
Yeah.
So it's, that aspect is okay. But
as you look to the future, this is something we talked about the other day, but I know, your experience and the things that you've gone through have really propelled you, I guess, forward into the future and kind of looking forward. You're now enrolled into your next stage of life, education-wise.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that brought that upon. Excuse me. But so there's a lot of reasons. So I finally decided that I want to move forward with some of my education, and I'm going to start off with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and eventually the retirement plan after I get done with this stint of imagery analysis. I want to be a VA psychiatrist.
Yeah. And
one of the big reasons is it took me like 2 or 3 years to actually go talk to a psychiatrist. And the funny story about how I got there, and this is going to sound crazy, but so I was watching one of my bosses on deployment was, at this time I'm stationed in Camp Pendleton, California. And one of my bosses from deployment, who's one of my best friends, he's my brother, he was stationed out there as well. So he was one of the first people
2010, 2011 time? 2012?
Probably 2012, around this time.
So we were, and we kind of had figured out, like, this was a time that we had kind of crossed paths in some ways and didn't even know it. I was in San Diego until I left December, like mid-December, early December 2012. And you would have been there around that same time. So
yeah, because I got out there around early 2011, I think. I got out there, maybe it would have been 2011. Yeah. So yeah, we had definitely crossed paths, and we didn't even know it. Same general area. But so at this point, I got out there and I was getting ready. I had already decided I was changing jobs. I met up with, his name's Ryan. He's my brother for life. We've helped each other through all this stuff because he struggled with this stuff a lot more than I did. And Like it was really hard for him. Years later, he was still going through a lot of stuff, and it seems like he's finally got some stuff figured out. But I was watching his house one night. He had gone on vacation or something, and I was talking to my girlfriend at the time, and this is gonna sound crazy, but I start hearing my phone click while I'm in a conversation with her, and I just get this spike of anxiety. And I hang up on her. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a couple minutes. I'm going to call her back. So I call her back, and I start hearing the clicks again. In my mind, somebody was tapping my phone.
Mm.
And
is that something you had experienced before, or is this just like paranoia in some ways?
But the thing is she was from Taiwan. And with my job, it wasn't like, it was known that I was dating her, but it wasn't really acceptable.
Yeah.
So I had all that stuff in my mind too. So I was like, shit, somebody's tapping my phone. I hung up on her. Well, then I'm sitting there and I just get this, I guess it could be considered a panic attack. Yeah. Because I'm like, man, they're going to come through like the doors and everything. So I ended up calling the only thing I could think to do was call the suicide hotline.
Yeah.
And I wasn't suicidal. I wasn't going to kill myself, but I didn't know what the hell else to do.
Yeah.
Because I was like, obviously this is because of some of the experiences I had. I got to talk to somebody. So I ended up talking to this dude. He was in the Navy, helped me out a lot. And the conclusion that I came to is I needed to go talk to a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So I talked to a psychiatrist, and I'm seeing this lady for about 2 months in total. I ended up seeing her. And the first 3 sessions that we had were like, the first 2 were like background information. And it's for an hour a piece once a week. So first 2 sessions, 3 sessions were, you know, how do you feel? All that bullshit, whatever, what happened this week, da, 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 da. Well, being in the community that I am, I'm very caught up and keen to current events and stuff like that. So it ended up getting to the point where I'm a very self-aware individual. Like I understand most of the time how I'm feeling, and I can figure out why I'm feeling that way, whether I'm tired or I need caffeine or I'm, you know, irritated because of this, or I'm letting this get to me. I'm a very self-aware individual. It got to the point where, like, I would spend the first 15 minutes of our conversations, like, breaking down myself, self-analyzing, and explaining to her how I felt, why I felt that way, and what I can do to correct it. And then the last 30, 45 minutes were just me spinning her up on current events. She was useless. I mean, maybe not to the point where she helped me realize that I can do this myself. But that was really where I learned that we need good psychiatrists and psychologists in the VA, and people that can actually help people that are going through things that can't do the things for themselves that I was able to do for myself.
Sure. And that's led you to the psychology route that now you want to go and to almost reinvest into the community and into the people that you feel needed the most in some way, I guess.
That's what led me to the final destination. That's where I want to be at.
Yeah. The
thing that actually got me there, because there's a couple of reasons I put off college. I put off college for one because I was scared. I was worried about going to college. Like, it was intimidating to do something that, you know, when you're a guy like me and you have so many interests, you don't want to go spend a bunch of money or waste your GI Bill on something that you don't know that you're going to want to do for the rest of your life, or you're just going to want to spend a ton of money on. Like, I didn't know what to do. And the fact that I've never really had to study, and I don't know how to study, and I have to learn how to study, and on top of everything else, like, so I had I'd finally learned what I wanted to do, but it wasn't until after I found out that one of my former Marines had killed himself.
Yeah.
That was when it kind of clicked, because this was a kid that I had pulled into my room nights that I lived in the barracks and just conversed with and had to talk to and just learned him and showed him that I too was human. I wasn't just Sergeant Gallinger that was an asshole all the time and just yelled at people and was angry. Like, I'm a human, and I want to get to know you, and I want to learn who you are and how to be a better leader. And it was that night that things kind of clicked for me.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, this is something that I did my entire career. Like, I was there for Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring it around, like, one thing that you and I talked about is, since I got out of the Marine Corps in 2015, my life has been wild. It's been crazy, from breaking up with my girlfriend at the time right after the Marine Corps, to getting back together with her, to getting her pregnant, to getting a paternity test because I didn't know if it was mine, to being a dad. And in that time, like, I had moved from California to DC, and I have my kid. She's a couple months old, and I moved from DC to Missouri, trying to make the relationship work again. It fails. Like, I think I was depressed in those, like, 3 years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I think, 2 months ago maybe, that I've really tried to, I had somebody tell me this, somebody that I held a lot of respect for, that she told me, "You're a miserable asshole." And it was an ex that she was the sweetest person, would never talk shit about anybody. And so I knew that, like, when she said that, I wasn't sure that you ever actually cared for me, because you never showed me any affection. When somebody that sweet tells you something like that, like, it really, it's a kick in the dick.
Yeah.
And so I really reassessed my life, and we weren't even together at this point. Like, she told me this afterwards, and I will thank her forever, because she really did. Like, she's the reason why I made the changes that I'm trying to make right now. And
yeah,
in just being happy. And that's kind of where this all comes from, is the resilience is the biggest thing when it comes to this mental health stuff, especially for veterans. And why I think, as a VA psychologist, I have something that I can give back to the community. Because we all are capable of that resilience.
Sure. Yeah. I really appreciate your story so much, and just your vulnerability. I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but she has a quote that says, vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And, I think that that's a big part of, one of the things that, even in the beginning of this podcast, how you talked about, like, you want to be able to let other military members, other Marines know, like, man, this is my story. This is what I'm going through, and you're not alone. And whatever way that is, and to reach other people. And I think that, again, I have no idea, like, I can't, I've lived in the safest place I ever could have, and I've never experienced anything like you have. And I just appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And I have a few questions as we kind of begin to kind of close things out, I guess. And one of those questions is, what do you look forward to most in the future?
watching my daughter grow.
Mm.
Like that's the very first thing that comes to mind. My daughter, like I always wanted a boy growing up. You know, I grew up in a family of 3 boys. A lot of my cousins, I only have on my dad's side, I only have 2 female cousins, and that's who I mostly grew up around. And I could gush over her for hours. Like there's nothing more than I needed. You know, I'm not a religious person, but if there is like a God's plan, then he knew I needed a fucking daughter.
Yeah.
Because she has done more for me than I could ever explain. She's made me such a better person. So
it's beautiful.
You know, the first thing I think of is I can't wait to watch her grow. Secondly, I think the biggest goal is to wake up every day and just be positive, or at least more positive than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't have to be the guy or the girl that walks around that's just happy as shit and just chipper,
mm-hmm.
and just, you know, whether his or her life is perfect. Like I just need to be a little bit happier every day.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Gary, what's his name?
Gary
the other
V.
day.
Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah, Gary V. And I was thinking about my grandfather. My grandfather passed away a couple of years ago. And I've had a lot of Gary V's, like growing up, I had a lot of Gary V's theories in my head. I just didn't have the multi-millions that he did. But my grandfather, years and years ago,
mm-hmm.
put it to me the same way Gary V did. And, you know, I come in and I'm like, hey, Grandpa, how you doing? And he's like, I'm good, but even if I was bad, no one would give a shit.
Yeah.
And it's...
I like that line, too. My grandpa always used to say that as, wow, how's the saying go? It's,
no one would listen to you anyway.
Yeah, no one would listen to me anyway. Yeah, like.
Yeah, and it's.
How are you today? Like, I'm good. Like, you know, nothing to complain about. Nobody would listen to me if I did anyway. You know, like that kind of concept. Yeah. And
it's, you know, as a kid, you're like, wow, that's pretty morbid. Even if you think that way, you're like, that's a pretty morbid way to think about it. But it's really true. And to be honest, like, you shouldn't think about it either.
Yeah. There's just so much more to go on, and it's easier said than done. I mean, it's a practice that you just have to continually like challenge yourself with. But yeah, I think you're right.
It is, and it starts from the second you wake up.
Yeah.
Literally, like, because it was 2 months ago. The first thing I would think of was something negative. Like, I shouldn't be paying this fucking child support, all right? I shouldn't be struggling this hard, even though I have a great job. Like,
yeah,
those were the things I would think. And now it's just like, all right, which song do I want to bump to this morning? Or, you know, let me go look at my daughter, even though she's still asleep.
Yeah, just changing your perspective. Yeah, it
is. And those are the big 2 things. And finally, I think it is. I shouldn't be, but at this point in time, I'm a big financial guy. Like, I want to get my financials in order. I want to get everything.
Nothing wrong with that.
I just want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think
my other question
that answers your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back, what advice would you tell little Travis?
Man,
freshman year of high school.
Shit.
You could look back and you could whisper something into little Travis's ear. What would you say?
Diet, like eat right. Because it's one of those, like, anything negative that happened in my life, I've always looked at something, especially like freshman year forward, like anything senior year back, anything that happened to me, like I had a rough childhood, but to me it was, diamonds require fucking pressure.
Yeah.
And that's, I can't be babied. I can't be like handled with white gloves. Like I have to be raised the exact way I was.
Yeah.
And it was rough, and it fucking sucked, and I got the shit kicked out of me sometimes. But, and I'll tell my dad this to this day, like, I fucking hated my dad.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to repair that. But all of those things are what made me who I am today. And it to this day, even though my struggles are completely different. So I don't know. I would just say, stop worrying about cutting so much weight and not eating, and just fucking eat a shit ton of clean food and just get massive. Like, that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah. That's
because
awesome.
as soon as I stopped trying to cut weight, dude, I got massive.
Yeah.
I put on so much goddamn weight and I look so good.
That's awesome. Do you ever think about your legacy?
All the time.
When you look back in your life, what do you want your legacy to be?
It's crazy because as a father, I want Ava to know that I was always there for her, and that there's nothing more than I wanted to do than be a dad.
Yeah.
And God, you got me tearing up. I guess I have myself tearing up over this, but being a dad is it's the greatest thing ever. I love my daughter more than anything, and I want to be the greatest dad that I can be to her, and I want to show her that that you can change, and that I've done a lot of it, and whatever you decide to do, you can do life however you want to.
Yeah.
Really, and it's just up to you to how to do it. Now, when it comes to everybody else, because my daughter, obviously, the legacy with my daughter is different.
Yeah.
The legacy with everybody else is I want them. I want to be the people that don't. This is kind of a Brantley Gilbert thing, but it's he's got a song. I think it's like most people do, most people don't. I don't know.
I know what you're talking about.
Those. Yeah. Yes, it's one of those, and it's something that it's been my life. Like, most people that like me love me. Most people that don't trust me, or that don't trust anybody, trust me. And most people that like don't love anybody love me.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, if you meet me, the first time you meet me, the chances are you're not going to like me.
Yeah.
But eventually, if you keep coming around, you're going to realize that I'm a good dude.
Yeah. And
I'm honest, and I don't sugarcoat shit, and I'm going to give you, like, I'm going to give you good advice, and eventually you know that whatever you need, I'm going to be there.
Yeah. Whether
it's to, move things from your house, or it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just there.
Yeah.
And the ones that love me, or the ones that know me love me, and that's really, it's been a staple of my life, man. And if you don't care to get to know me, then I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I want my legacy to be, and my casket, because I want my casket to be totally clean, and I want people to have permanent markers, and I want them to write whatever the fuck they want on my casket. And there's going to be plenty of dicks drawn, and I know it.
Travis, that's a great way to end it right there. I appreciate you coming on this show and sharing your story so much. We filled, almost 3 hours, and man, I know that
and we got more to talk about.
I know, man. I know there's so much to talk about. That's what I was getting ready to say. And here's my thing is, come visit me in Florida.
I want to.
All right.
Let me get things sorted out, and I'm there, man.
You got an open invitation. I got a spare bedroom that's got your name on it, and
awesome.
I'd love to come and spend some time with you. It's crazy to see and to think about how our story and how our relationship and how our friendship is. Again, we haven't talked to each other in 10 years, probably.
Easily. I don't think we've talked to each other since I was in high school.
Yeah, but
I might have called you drunk a couple times.
I think you have. Yeah, I think you.
Pretty sure I have.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have too. But no, I just really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story, and I think that your future is bright, and I just look forward to seeing you grow and seeing you continue to develop as a man, and just know that I'm always here, and if you need me, just give me a call.
Much appreciated, brother. And the next time, while the podcast you did by yourself was not bad, the next time you want to do one, give me a call so I can interview you.
Deal. Deal.
It'll be a little better.
All right, deal. I'll give you a call next time. Next time I need to fill in like that, I'll give you a call for sure.
Yeah, and I'm always available. Well, I'm available when I don't have my daughter. So go ahead, man.
All right, sounds good, dude. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do, honestly. Like, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate your vulnerability and you sharing so openly with your story. So thank you so much.
I most appreciate you giving me the platform to give not just my story. Like, I don't really care about my story. The biggest thing for me is getting out with the veteran and active mental health. Like, and it goes beyond those that have gotten out. Like, us as leaders, even in the active or reservists, it doesn't matter. We need to be more cognizant of these things, and we need to see these signs, and these are things that friends, family, everybody needs to be cognizant of.
Absolutely.
And if we can get as a fighting force, if we can be more open to sharing our stories, because the people that matter in your life don't know what you're going through unless they know what you've been through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, it's important. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
You got a platform anytime you need it. Hey, listen up, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show today, visit us on Facebook and Instagram. Comment on the post, like the post. If you want to go above and beyond, get the word out. Share the CrazyFaceUno podcast with your friends and family, or just random strangers.
Subscribe and subscribe again.
Or just random strangers on the street. We're welcome to everyone. Please visit CrazyFaceUno.com, buy our merchandise, or donate if that's what you choose to do. Your contribution helps us share more stories like Travis's and stories just like yours. We appreciate you. We love you all. Thanks again for listening. Peace!